wants to run fast. So my studies are always on how can you make people fast. So the topic is the mechanical basis of maximal speed in mobile sprinters. The really interesting part about this data set is one of the most unique data sets in the world. We have 56 world-class sprinters, which is unheard of in any data set there. To go into the background, we know from research that to run fast, you need to apply large mass-specific ground reaction forces. So you need to hit the ground as fast as possible, as hard as possible. So if you have a high school runner who wants to be an Olympic athlete, you tell them to apply more force to the ground. But what happens when everyone is applying higher forces? What do they need to do different to run faster? So, for example, on this field, you can see even not 1 second determines who wins and who does not. That's like $1 million. You get $1 million when you win an Olympic gold medal. So what happens if you are applying enough forces? Which variable determines who runs fast? So that's what we're going to dive into. So what we use here is called speed equation. So speed equation is basically, we're going to break it down what speed equation is, but we use that to determine the variables, what determines speed. So hypothesis, I'm going to explain more into the variables I'm going to use here. First one I already said is the average mass specific force, which is really important. We say that that's going to be positively related to speed. So that we already know in the research. But another variable which is of interest here is contact length. I'm going to explain what contact length is, but just remember contact length we hypothesize is going to be positively related to speed. So in the methods, like I said, there's 56 national, international caliber sprinters. How do we decide that? We basically know the data set we got was from the World Champs or the US National 100 meter finals. This data set were collected from different studies across that was published. So 48 from those came from direct races, and 8 of them came from Dr. Wayne's lab on the treadmill. So that's 56 there. After that, you see the speed equation. What it actually is basically your leg length times frequency. So basically what we first did is try to see So basically, the first part that you see, a bunch of variables you see, that's basically speed equals the leg length, how far are you going, times your frequency, how fast you're moving your legs. So what we did into the bivariate analysis is we just put those values into the equation and try to find out if there's a direct relationship in there. Frequency had no relationship, so how fast you move your legs doesn't matter at that level. But the leg length, which you see the broken down variables, that had relationship. That was R squared equals 0.6. So we broke it down into the F average times body mass, which was the average mass specific force, times LC, which is the contact one, and tried to see independently if they are explaining any variance into the speed. They did not. Like there's no correlation. Like we took leg length, it was related. We broke it down, there was no relationship. So we tried to find out what's going on. There must be something different going on. So as you can see, Vmax there is the maximum sprinting velocity. F average by MV is the average mass specific. So we take the average force there, apply it to the ground, divided by the body mass. So we take this, that gives like a relative average force. LC is the contact length. So this is like a new variable. So as you can see, Usain Bolt right there. He is in a position where he's going to start his contact. To starting his contact to leaving the ground and being in the air. So you see this person, he's in the air, so he just finished his contact. So the time you are on the ground, that's contact time. But how far you move till you are on the contact with the ground. So for example, if this is a center of mass, and then he moves forward and leaves the ground, so how far he moved horizontally, that's the contact length. So how far you're moving in touch with the ground. So that's LC. Frequency, how fast you're moving your legs. So going into detail so what we use is, since linear regression did not find anything with the force and the LC, we dive deeper into the multiple regression. So the first model, we combine F average and LC, 35% of the variance was explained. So voila. So combining both variables explain about 35% of the variance. Model 2, what we did was we added height. So like I said, LC is basically how far you go with each contact. So if you're taller, kind of makes sense, you will go further with each contact, right? So that's why we added height to see if that's kind of a variable that could explain the speed. It meaningfully did not increase the rate, so it was only 37%. So okay, height does not really matter when you are running at. So what is happening there? So to be able to see what's actually happening, we again did an interaction effect, which is F average and LC, so see if they both have an effect on each other. If you're applying higher forces, does your LC increase? Okay. If you're applying higher forces, does your LC increase or it decreases? Or if your LC is increasing, does F average decreases? There has to be some kind of a giveaway between both of those, since height is not a metric. So we did that, and we found out 41% of the players was explained that. So if you have a high school athlete which goes to Olympics and he's applying the force on the ground, to be able to win the race, he also needs to extend his LC, which is we're finding is a skill that elite athletes have, which is there could be 1,000 people applying the force onto the ground, but the skill that they have is they're extending their LC, which is kind of a new thing we found out through this data set, and nobody has this data set. So this will be really helpful for coaches to do is the elite athlete has a skill which is extending their LC, which is really fascinating because skills today we found out is LC is kind of tied to their height because it kind of makes sense, like a pendulum model. The apex of your stride is your height, which is your leg length, but through this we found out it is not. So we thought, okay, if this is the case, what if shorter sprinters are extending their LC? What if that's happening? Shorter sprinters could extend their LC with this skill. What we did is a covariate analysis between LC by height. So we took their LC, divided by their height, so we got what's called relative LC. So if they're extending, there could be different LCs, relative LCs for different people. And then did a covariate analysis against height. What we found out is no, they're not extending. So LC is tied to the height, but again, the whole based off of interaction and covariate analysis, we could find out is if you're applying higher forces, you should be also extending LC, which is a skill. So that's why we see a different height range into the top elite athletes variation there. So the conclusion and the discussion from this is since this is a really homogeneous data set, as you can see in the results, height mean SD is about 0.06, homogeneous LC, F average, Max about 11.4, which is really elite. And the frequency, you can see all these standard deviations are really homogeneous. There's not a lot of difference between them. Even without that, we can see that there's height differences the range is 1.65 to 1.96, and all of them athletes are applying 2.36 times their body weight force into the ground. So even with that, what they're doing different is their LC, like they're increasing their LC. So all those fields, all those 8 athletes, who's gonna win? Probably whoever can extend their LC past their limits. So that's what we found from this study. And thank you. Questions? Yeah.
Yes, thank you for your presentation, Garish. I don't know if this is a good question or not, but I'm gonna ask.
All questions are good questions. Go ahead.
Does the population of those who use the overground versus those who use treadmill affect your validity of the data? Or how does it affect the translation into real world, such as adhering to sports performance metrics?
So when we do the calculations for the speed equation, we take in consideration TC TR. So when we do the frequency calculation, it's 1 divided by TC plus TR. So if those TC TR data matches with the F average that we get from the ground outside, that's kind of matches, like, oh, they're doing the same thing that they're doing out there. Because that's the whole thing, like everything you see here, if that matches, the force they apply, the TC they have in the lab, outside the lab, the TR they have, TR is basically the same thing. So as long as those parameters matches, that means we can tell, oh, they're doing the same thing in the lab, which is they're doing outside the lab.
Thank you.
And that can account for like wind and force not coming from the ground? The
There's like legal limits for wind, like 2 meters per second.
Okay.
They're like anything more than that is illegal overall. So any races that you see, if there's more wind, those are illegal. So if they're illegal, we don't take their performance levels there.
So they'll just be like, nah, we're not running today? Is that
Oh no,
illegal?
so for example, if the wind is more than 2 meters per second, and if we run a world record, that world record doesn't count.
So they still make you run, but then they take your
You
stats
get a
away?
medal,
It's-
but you don't
you
get the
cannot
world.
change-
You
you
don't get the
cannot-
world record
You
because
cannot
it's
control the world.
aided by the wind.
What if it's a headwind?
That's different. Then you're really
That's
good.
still
because-
good. Yeah.
Then you really deserve it.
Okay, this might
That
be a dumb
never
question, but
Yeah.
do they always run outside? We're not doing this inside like football? That seems like a great solution. No?
I don't think indoor seasons, yes, they happen inside, but that's 60 meter. I don't think there's any stadium that's 100 meter indoor.
I would be devastated. This is why I'm not a runner. Solidified it. I'm not doing it, guys.
It's only for the 100 meters though. Any other event, it's fine. 400, sure. Give me 400 runner. Yeah, go ahead.
And this may be a stupid question.
Go ahead.
Did y'all, or has anybody looked at a proportion? Because you were saying that height wasn't significant, but
Yeah.
the proportion of legs to the upper body varies person to person. Is there anything corresponding with leg length? Because you were saying like how to get, if I'm understanding correctly, farther while you're in the air is one of the ways
Yeah,
that
more than, so based on study, leg length, that we did leg length, like we have leg length. What we basically do is take 0.55% of the height, which is the leg length for African descent population, which the study has been done for them. Based on that, leg length is not correlated like with height, anything. What is different based on your question is their lower leg length is more. So they're like Achilles tendon is bigger, or they're like anything like their legs below the knee are bigger for sprinters. That's different. So those studies are happening now. So we don't know, but based on our observation, you can see their tendons are bigger, like Achilles tendon is bigger. Yeah.
You mentioned that the population group in terms of your predictor variables are fairly homogeneous, but what's the variance of like the outcome, the time? Like, isn't it pretty, aren't the times pretty similar across the 56 data points in terms of their race speeds,
Max speed.
their max speed? And would that influence some of these?
Not a lot.
Regression.
You can see like it's 0.27 meters per second. It's the standard deviation for time, like speed. It's not as homogeneous as the other data points you can see there. Like you can see like for height it's only 0.06, so 6 centimeters across. LC is 0.07, 7 centimeters. F average is 0.16. Frequency is 0.18. But V max is 0.37. That's like 4 meters per second difference is a lot for 100 meters overall. So the cutoff was 10.6 meters per second, and we have athletes run all the way up to 12.3. That's like the range of that. So
Okay.
we have fairly like, based on the velocity, we have a fairly good range of